More funding to help farmers and communities struggling with the drought is on the way. Scott Morrison's cabinet to meet today in Sydney to finalise a new assistance package.
Let's go live now to our political reporter Trudy McIntosh, who's here at Parliament House with us in Canberra. Trudy, what are we expecting?
Well, the Morrison government is expected to tick off on additional support for farmers dealing with the drought, but also a package that would help support the regional communities around those drought-affected areas. It's obviously been a really tricky time for them, and the government says they're not going to set and forget when it comes to drought policy, that they're going to continue to assess as things go on whether more measures are needed. The Trade Minister, Simon Birmingham, was speaking on Sky News earlier today. He's in Shanghai, but says that this drought package is about providing hope for people who are struggling with the drought.
Hope is an important part of it, but ultimately it's about responding to the circumstances that are there. Prime Minister Morrison has made many visits and tours into drought-affected communities now, and each time it's been about checking the situation in those communities and coming back and thinking then about the policy responses to deal with what is an ever-evolving circumstance. It's not something where 12 months ago, when he was in those communities and developing the initial policy responses, you could say, well, that's it, done and dusted, forget about it. Because we're 12 months on, the drought has continued, the circumstances in those communities has worsened.
We know that the Nationals have been pushing hard internally and publicly for their own level of drought assistance. That $1.3 billion package, the centrepiece of that, would be split amongst the states and $10 million allocated to drought-affected councils. It'll be interesting to see how much of that proposal does make it into this broader package that's going to be ticked off by Cabinet today. Here was the Nationals MP Keith Pitt asked whether he would be happy to see not that $1.3 billion of funding in the measure.
We are fighting for every single dollar that we can find for regional communities. That is both in the short, medium and long term. And in my view, the long-term prospect is the main one. We need to ensure that we increase resilience moving forward for people who will be drought affected in the future. This is not something which will go away forever. You always get droughts in this country.
Trudy, on another matter, the Auditor General has released a scathing review of the Coalition's jobs plan.
That's right. They really dug into the detail of the Coalition's $220 million regional jobs plan and found that there are several inadequacies in it, that it lacked transparency. There was a series of conflicts of interest in terms of how it was being managed, and also that some of this funding was going towards projects that were actually deemed ineligible under the criteria. Labor has been very critical of the way this has been handled, and particularly the timing in which it was released. This report dropped out just an hour after the Melbourne Cup yesterday.
Wow, isn't it amazing that you would release a report like that when everybody's obsessing over the Melbourne Cup? I mean, this is a shocking report that shows that money was directed to projects that were not recommended by the responsible department, that ministers interfered in the selection of projects. How cynical is it that we've got a government that thinks that they can slip it out in the shadow of the Melbourne Cup and nobody will notice? It's so dodgy.
But it's worth noting the Auditor General did rebuke one of Labor's claims that there had been a level of pork barrelling within this program. They say that they can't find evidence to support that claim.
Trudy, we'll talk to you soon.